Okay.
Now, if you want me to give you those famous words before you start and tell you that we're not going to be nervous.
Well, I get nervous.
You're talking all the pictures. Who's trouble right there?
Put him right in front of me, the troublemaker. Did he plan that?
I will talk to you later.
Hear that? Gotta talk about how many churches have you all done anything with?
Oh, I don't even know to tell you the truth. We've smoked at several churches, and then
I think so. You've been to some.
yeah, and then we did I spoke at behavioral health unit at Trillium, and then the Corbin Library. That's how we I think it is. It's not a weekly meeting. I don't think it could be. That's hosted also through the hospital somehow. And I spoke with them. And then I spoke with the grant program. Chaz Hope was one of those I spoke at. And then Anchor Ministries, I spoke with them. There's one more.
Keep talking things that the one that Tim went to was called Redemption Road.
I've heard of Redemption Road.
But I think it's somewhere around or near. I'm thinking it's somewhere around or near. I don't know if it's voluntary or not. You might be able to wait. I know, but it's 6 months. Yeah, that one too. So I think it's commonly known to be knocking on people's windows, screaming that somebody's trying to kill you.
Let me get you some.
Oh no, I've taken rain with it before. It's okay. The thing you can't get wet is on the sealed side. That's why I bought this one more than any other. Look at the mouse, look at the mouse.
Is that a napkin?
It's just right here. Man. I just put these verses on there, so they're in the order you sent them.
Yeah, that's fine. That was just when you look up refund, and that's the verses that came down with that.
That was
Which I'll just start out by telling a little bit about.
That will be the ones you're saying. That's what I forgot.
Okay. Do you open with prayer? How do you?
Close.
Okay.
Once we're done with it.
Okay.
Let me watch the rain off the screen so I can start. Okay. Okay. We'll go ahead and get started. You good back there? I'm looking at you, Ginger.
Oh, yeah.
Just checking. bad message right there for sure. So tonight we're going off of what we've been doing for our studies, and we'll pick that back up after tonight. But tonight I have a very special friend with me. I work with her at the hospital. She's got about 5 times the energy that I've got. So prepare.
I feel sorry for
Huh? Well, the good news is now she has been down in the ER time or two, but good news is she's on a whole nother floor. So she gets to come through and visit me. It's like a flow. She comes through, but normally when she's coming through, she's got like a stack of papers like this walking through. So there's a lot of work going on there. I don't want no part of it. So let her keep that in whatever she's doing. But huh? Yeah, I'm gonna let her keep that as much of that work as she wants to do and upstairs. So as a matter of fact. But, I'll let I know that her is Missy, but Melissa is her legal name in case anybody's wanting to know. And so if you hear me saying Missy, that's what I know. That's all I've known since working with her. That's what anybody that works with her would tell you is this is Missy. If somebody asks me for Melissa, I kind of look at them a little funny because I'm not sure who they're talking about. We have multiples in the building, so I don't know which one. But if Missy comes up, then I've kind of got a clue about who we're going to. So. I'm gonna let her take over and tonight, and if she's got questions, she may ask you all some questions tonight, and then at the very end, you all are welcome to ask her anything you want to. At the end, she has spoke at multitudes of places. I think you all might want to get your autograph. She might be going to the White House before long, but she spoke at various recovery ministries, events, various things that she can tell you all about. I don't want to take anything away that I don't know about. So I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell you all about that. And then she's going to go into some things tonight. Be very attentive. I've sent a paper out for anybody that wants to write anything down. If you think of a question or something you want to ask her, don't be afraid to, but jot it down. That way at the end when you get done, you'll remember what you was wanting to ask. So I'm going to turn it over to Missy tonight and let her pick right up.
So I'm Missy. I'll start by telling you I'm not a public speaker, and you'll figure that out real fast after you hear me speak for a few minutes. But I promised God something when I went through what I went through with my daughter. I promised him that if he would stay near to me and just help me survive it, that any door that he opened, I would be willing to go through. And I would be willing to share my story, my testimony, or do whatever I needed to do. And I may get emotional. This is my daughter's birthday month, and it's Mother's Day month, and I had a hysterectomy last week. so you know, I may get a little emotional. Just bear with me if I do. I'll get back on course if that happens. I haven't spoken in a little bit. We've been real busy with events and different stuff, so I'm a little rusty, but I'm expecting God to give me the words, and I know that He'll do that because He's done it every time before. So to tell you a little bit about me, He's already told you I'm a nurse. To share my story, I have to share my daughter's story, a little bit of her story. It's kind of our story instead of my story. I had been married for 25 years. I was a nurse. I had 2 children, 16 and 18, a daughter 16, a son 18. Couldn't ask for better kids. You know, they'd never given me any problems. They were raised in church. I thought my life was, I thought I could tell you where I was going to be 20 years from that day, you know. I thought I had it all figured out, you know, but my daughter, and I still today don't know the why behind it, she died by suicide at 16 in our home. She shot herself in her bedroom with my gun that she got out of my car. I worked night shift then, and I had a gun with me all the time for protection because a lot of times they would send me home in the middle of the night if we had low census and things like that. I remember telling the police when they come to my house about the gun, you know, I automatically thought, I can't believe I had a gun in my car. But, you know, if that gun had been laying on my bar, I wouldn't have thought a thing about her being there with that gun there. You know, my husband hunted, we took our kids hunting. They knew all about guns. They respected guns. They knew not to play with them. You know, they knew what guns would do. It wasn't like it. I knew it wasn't an accident because she was very well aware of what a gun would do. I just remember, my husband and I, we found her in her bedroom. And she wasn't gone at that time. She still had a heart rate of like 40. She couldn't respond. She shot herself in the temple. There was a lot of blood. I'm a nurse. He was a respiratory therapist. We, automatically started doing everything in our professional background that we knew to do to save her. I started praying because I was raised in church. I knew God could turn it around. I knew He could. There was no doubt there. I knew that He could. But as I started to pray, and I don't know if any of you have ever done that, but as I started to pray, it was like I felt a heaviness, like this prayer is not leaving this room almost, and I prayed harder, God, I know you can do this. Let me keep her, any condition, just please let me keep her, but I could tell, the more I prayed, that it was just like that wasn't going to happen. So as she started to decline and I realized, this is not going the way I'm wanting it to go, I started to talk to her more. And I told her, I said, her name was Bethany. I said, Bethany, I want you to ask Jesus to help you. If you can't stay with me, I wanted her to stay, but I told her, if you can't stay, I want you to ask Jesus for mercy. Right now, I want you to ask Him to come and help you. And in that moment, every breath she'd had up until that moment was a struggle. I don't know if you've ever heard what's called death thrills, but that's what she had, was death thrills. And it's kind of a labored, gurgly breath. And every time she would stop breathing, I would say, Bethany, please breathe, take another breath. And she would take another breath, but it was a struggle. When I said that to her, when I said, I want you to ask Jesus for mercy, He'll come and He'll help you. She took a big, deep breath, completely unlabored. And as she breathed out, it was like there was no rattle, there was no rail. It was long and just almost at peace kind of breath. And I can't explain it. I don't know if any of you have ever felt it, but in that moment, there was a presence there. I could feel it in the room. I could feel the presence, and I knew God was with me, but that brings me to what I want to talk to you about tonight. I knew God was with me in that moment, but I didn't understand why I was where I was at. I didn't understand why this had happened and why He allowed it to happen, because I know everything that happens, God allows. He has control of everything. He could work us like a robot if He wanted to. But, I didn't understand. I wasn't ever angry with God, but I was confused, because I was married about 6 years before I had children, and I had 2 miscarriages and a tubal pregnancy, and I spent a lot of nights laying in bed crying and asking God to give me babies, And I said, Lord, I'll take them to church. I'll train them up. They'll know about you. I'm going to raise workers for you. They're going to know about you. So when that happened, I didn't understand. I felt like, God, I done what I said I was going to do. Why did you let this happen? I couldn't wrap my head around it. So tonight, what I want to talk to you about is the silence. Sometimes you pray for things and you expect your answer to be the answered prayer. You expect what you want. I expected that miracle, Him to turn all that around. But that's not how God works. Sometimes you get that miracle. Sometimes you get a no. Sometimes you get later, But I didn't get what I wanted. I got what was God's will. And serving God, that's part of it. You don't work Him either. You don't tell Him what you want and it just happened because you're saved and you love Him and you've given your heart to Him. That's not how it works. So that's where I come with this silence. Have you ever prayed and asked God for something that you didn't get? Or have you ever prayed and just felt like, where are you? Do you hear me? I have felt that. When I prayed, I felt like He's distant from me. And I didn't understand because, I guess I expected Him to just show up in this mighty big way and just come right down and, just make everything better, but that wasn't the process. That wasn't the refining. And that's where that brings me to refining and drinking from the bitter cup. You know, when you go through things, there's a refining process. When I got saved as a little girl, but as I matured in my Christian walk with God, I told him I want to be an instrument. I want to serve you. I want to be Christ-like. And in order to do those things, you have to drink from that bitter cup. You know, how can I stand in front of you today and talk about suicide and how to get through those kind of things and how to get close to God and how to walk through that dark valley if I've never been in that dark valley? I mean, how can I talk to you about feeling desperate and feeling like you pray sometimes and he's not right there, that he's silent, if I've never experienced it? I mean, that would be like you trying to tell me about losing somebody to suicide if you've never lost anybody to suicide. You might have a heart for me, you might have compassion for me, you might be able to pray for me, but you have no idea what goes through my mind or what brings it all back. Or, I know automatically usually if I'm talking to somebody that's lost somebody to suicide, because I have a connection with them without them even telling me. I can tell they've lost somebody just from what they say. And they know I'm not going to judge anything they say, and they're not going to judge anything I say, because we both have been on that journey. We know what that's like. You all walk different walks. You've went through different things than I have. And I think about the disciples when I talk about the different struggles that we have. They were so different. There were fishermen, there was a physician, there was a tax collector. They all had very different walks in life, but that was because they all were sent to reach different people. And the things I go through and the things you go through, we go through those so that we can help other people. That's how I feel in their struggle. I thought, how can any good come from this? How could, the Bible says, that all things work for the good of those who love him. And I remember thinking that and even praying that to him. I talk to God just like I would talk to you. I don't have any kind of professional words or any certain way I do it. I talk to him when I'm driving down the road. I talk to him if I'm frustrated. I talk to him just like I'm talking to you right now. And I remember saying, how can any good come from this? I don't understand. This is terrible. This is awful. She would have been a wonderful instrument for your kingdom. How can good possibly come from this? But through this journey, a little over 7 years, almost eight in August, I've realized that there are people that don't know God that's going through this. And how in the world they make it, I have no idea. I have no idea. Because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for God. I can tell you that. There's no way I'd be standing here in front of you today. I would be in the cemetery, or my body would be there. My soul wouldn't, but I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Lord. He is the reason I'm still here. He's the reason I'm standing in front of you today. And I believe that's why I went through what I went through, is because there's people out there that don't know Christ. And they're losing people the same way I lost them. And I can have that connection with them, but I cannot just tell them about the 988 crisis line or you need to get resources, because that is helpful. That's good. But if you don't tell people about Christ, you fail them in the long run, because that is the lifeline. And I believe that's, with all my heart, that's why I did go through that journey, that I'm going through the journey that I'm going through now. I do, I have spoke quite a bit. I'm never comfortable really with standing up and talking to people, especially about things like this. But to get back to the refining part of it, a refining process, if you're refining silver or gold, what that refiner does, he puts that piece over a fire. And if it's too cold, then the impurities don't melt off of it. They don't go away. If it's too hot, it destroys it. So it has to be the right temperature, and he has to sit right there and watch it close to make sure. And the way that he knows when it's done, when it's refined, and when it's ready, is that he can see his reflection in the piece. And that is what Christ does with us. He lets us go through the trials. He lets us go through the fire. He lets us drink from that bitter cup. He watches us. He's attentive to us. He's right there with you the whole time. You may not feel him. You may feel like he's silent, but he's right there. You know, sometimes that's when we do the most growth, is when we have to stop and listen for that still small voice. You know, you can't hear it when you're listening to the chaos in the world. You know, you can't hear him, but he's right there. And sometimes it takes the silence to be able to hear him. And, you know, that is when we do our growth. When you think about it, when a seed's planted and it's in that dark, cold ground, that's when it's doing the growing, you know, and then it peaks up after the watering. But as we're in that, you know, as we're in that fire, it's not pleasant. It's uncomfortable. It's the crushing, you know, it's hard. But if we draw nigh to him, he won't let us stay there so long that it destroys us. And when we're done being refined, we can see Christ in us and other people can see Christ in us. You know, that's what it takes. It takes that process. And then you can really talk to people. You can witness to other people and help them find him, and he can help them. You know, I can't save anybody, but the Lord can. You know, and I can tell you, he walked with me. He's done everything but give her back to me. I can say that, and he's going to do that. You know, just a matter of time. When I'm done doing my work here, he's going to give her back. You know, and I'll have her for eternity. Can I ask you all have, and if you're not comfortable, that's fine, but how many of you have lost someone that you know to suicide? And how many of you have contemplated suicide? I have. Any questions about anything? Anything you want to share? Well, share your names and tell me a little bit about you. You're smiling, so.
My name's Dylan Campbell.
Okay. You're not sure what else to say. That's not bad.
Who's that lady beside you?
My fiance.
All right.
Introduce yourself, fiance.
I'm Haley. I'm 18. I don't know what else to say.
In college?
Oh yeah, I'm in college.
Oh, okay. She's gonna help you out.
University of Richmond, Kentucky. Major in aerospace.
You remembered something now. It came back.
And you're gonna major in what?
Elementary.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
I'm Chris Chant. I'm 25. I love the Lord and He's blessed me.
You're a walking miracle. I can add that part.
She got to be there when Chris first got admitted to the hospital before he was flown to Louisville. Missy was one of the nurses that was on the floor when we brought him in.
I didn't recognize him.
My name's Karen Elliott. I'm a widow. Mother, grandmother, great-grandmother. I just retired after 22 years of work at the bank. And I'm glad I'm saved. The Lord has been with me through the struggle that I'm going through with my youngest son right now. And it's a very hard struggle, but I know the Lord's going to take care of it. It's going to fix him or allow me to be able to stand through it all.
And he can.
My name is Christy Overton. I am also a widow. And I stayed out of church for a very long time. I even didn't take my kids to church. But after my husband passed, brought us here. We've been here since. And I got to see him. So
That's wonderful.
we're praying for him.
My name's Brandon Ogers. Thank you for sharing your story. It's pretty good. Glad you're still here with us.
Thank you.
Tell us about it.
I'm glad I am too.
My name's Roger. Gibbons, the troublemaker, he said. But, I lost my wife last year. Almost even been a year next month. I went to church 50-some years to you. She was a miracle woman too. She had a heart transplant in 07. She had it on 7/7/7. July the 7th, the 7th, and of 07. And she was on her deathbed. But God gave her to me. I had her 18 more years.
And he's gonna give her back.
Well, I
She's
know where
waiting
she's
on
at.
you, right?
I know where she's at.
That's right.
I know she had a stroke there last. And I asked the doctor if she's gonna make it. And I remember what he said. He said, well, there's life and there's quality of life. We can put tubes in her and things like that, you know. No, we talked about that. Neither one of us will anything like that. But, they said, you want me to send the chaplain up here and talk to you? I said, no, I have this right here. I had it there, I read it while I was there all the time. I know what God can do. I know He's blessed me. And Josh, he helped me a lot. He kind of with me, talks about me bad all the time, but that's okay. We got a good church here. We got a loving church. That's enough.
Timothy Buckles, and I'm a recovering addict of about 25 years, oxycontin, morphine, and methamphetamine, different stuff that I've been along the way.
Yeah.
Around doing it, or actually while doing it. But God helped me with that in 2000, well, actually a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I was saved in 2019.
It's amazing the difference when you try to do it on your own and when you let God help you through it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, he must have known that. I know he did.
He knows
I
us
just
better
don't
than we know
understand.
ourselves. I mean,
How he could have saved me being on meth. Something I could about right now.
but you know what? We're enough. And God validated that worth. And, you know, He validated that for us on the cross. We don't have to question if we measure up if we're enough. He validated that for us.
My name's Ricky Turner. I'll be 74 in 9 more days. Been blessed by the Lord for many things. I realize the heart of man is evil, it's pretty wicked. God is able to control us all. I love Him. Just need prayer from my church family, right? Did it. I love Him. Been married 56 years. This lovely
A
lady
day or
beside
two,
me.
huh? Yeah. Newlyweds.
And I'm a veteran. That's enough about me.
I'm Tommy Turner, and I'm Rick's lovely wife.
You are lovely.
And I lost a dad to suicide. And I know that feeling and that valley. And God's helped me through it, brought me through it. And I just praise Him for that. That's Lord.
I'm Pam. Lost my mother 2 months ago. She lived to be 88. Blessed to have her. It's been a struggle without her.
Go ahead, Michelle. Not everybody knows who you are. I do.
My name's Michelle, and I'm Nikki's friend. And I don't really know
I guess the short story, I was raised in a wonderful family, blessed beyond measure, a godly mom and dad. And I battled with depression for many, many years in silence because I was ashamed, because I had no reason to be depressed or feel alone. I had a good home, I had the best parents in the world, and I can tell you that most of my life was spent in the altar every church service that they called us to the altar, saying, God, I don't understand, you've made my heart break. I know you don't make mistakes, but you make my heart break. And sorry, I don't know what happened. But anyway, I did that for many years, and it was after I turned the Bible on. When this happened with Beth, nobody ever knew that I was depressed. I didn't tell my friends, I didn't tell my parents, but every night when I went in my room, it was a battle with Satan every night. And I was ashamed. And when Beth passed, I had gotten to the point that I had pulled away from God. And I can remember the phone call. And I looked at my husband and I said, take me to the mountains. And somewhere between Clarfield and the top of that mountain, I begged God to allow me to be close to him again, because I needed him to hear my prayer. Because I knew, not that my prayer could do anything, but I knew I had to pray, and God had to hear me, or my friend would not survive the loss that she had just had. I've never known a mother, as selfless as she was, or kids that adored their mother any more than hers did. She never wanted a girls' day. She never wanted to go to the movies or hang out, because if you'd say, Missy, let's go, she'd say, oh, I'm going to be with the kids. That's okay. You know, that's what she did. And I knew that I had to reach God. And I did, thank God, for his forgiveness and his mercy. And the walk that we've been on for the last 7 years, I can't even explain. Just seeing how God works and the peace. I've heard that scripture my whole life. He gives peace that passes understanding. That time after time, I've watched him pick her back up and her allow him. And that's one of the big processes for anybody that's walking through something that you don't understand, or there's the silence. God's not going to knock you over the head and take it from you. You have to allow God to give you that healing. And that's I guess, the best advice I can give. And my daddy passed a few years back, and I was a daddy's girl. And my mom was superwoman, strongest woman I've ever known in my life. And I lost my mom. She's alive, but I lost my mom the day I lost my dad. And I didn't have a chance to grieve, but on the way to the funeral home that night, across Bondi Mountain, my mom was in my back seat, and I had a fear come over me like I had never experienced in my life. And I could not physically push the gas pedal because I knew where I was going. And I knew I had to say goodbye to my dad. And I can remember looking at my mom in the rearview mirror and saying, God, I can't do this. And I heard his voice as clear as I can hear my own right now say, yes, you can. And it felt like warm water poured over me. And I got peace that passes understanding that day, that moment. And I can say with joy in my heart, in the last 5 years, there has not been a day that I have grieved for my father. When I think of him, it's with joy and it's with peace. And he can give you peace that passes understanding, no matter what you're going through, no matter if it's trials with your children or hate. The world has turned into such a hateful place. And as Christians, we're having to deal with things that we never dreamed that we would deal with. But there's peace that passes understanding. And long story short, back to my God, you made my heart wrong. I never dreamed that all these years later, he made my heart, because I needed to understand people who walked through depression. And that's why I walked through mine. And all those years, he was refining me and helping me so that on these walks and on these events, I can understand people that live in darkness, because I lived in it for many years. And it was through Bethany's Hope one night that I received my healing from depression. she called me one day and said, you know, Michelle, I can't do it. I don't have it in me today. I need you to speak to the kids tonight. And through him and by him, we are overcomers. And we're made overcomers by our testimonies. And I'm just honored and thankful that God chose me. And if I could go back, I would walk through it again, just so I could step.
She's like, we're like Moses and Aaron. She's my mouthpiece.
She's
I tell
taught
my
me-
story and then she just kind of.
She's taught me so much, and it's just she's just amazing. That's all I can.
He's looking at me, so I'm probably going to have to tell you who he is. This is my husband, Tony. He is not Bethany's dad. Bethany's father and I went two very separate ways when Bethany passed away. He got very angry with God, and I got very close to God, even closer than I was before. You know, and he gave me the ultimatum one day that I couldn't have anything to do with God in our house, or I wouldn't have him, and I chose God. So he went his way and I went mine, and I wish him the best today. I hope that he finds healing, and I hope that he gets to spend eternity with her. You know, I don't have any ill will toward him. I want him to find healing and get saved. But this is Tony, and he is my husband of 2 years. And I work him like a borrowed mule in Bethany's Hope. He doesn't talk a lot, and this is probably the first time he's ever went to an event where I spoke. Usually we're doing horse shows and handing out bracelets and doing things like that. So he's quiet. So this is Tony. Go ahead.
My name's Robert Cook. Listening to talking and stuff, my question is, you're out there helping those people that's suffering through somebody having suicide.
Mm-hmm. That or somebody contemplating suicide. I have people reach out all the time that have lost kids, parents. Sometimes I get 3 o'clock in the morning phone calls from people that are contemplating suicide. And what I try to do in those kind of cases, I talk to them, and I most of the time will try to get them to let someone do a wellness check on them if I feel like they're definitely in crisis. If they won't talk to anybody that's there close to them, I encourage them to dial 988 and talk to the hotline. And then we give them resources of places that may be able to help them.
Right now, speaking, like I say, that's one of the signs people don't realize that people are suffering through it, like you did, not being the one that committed suicide.
Yes.
And my other question was there any telltale signs down there?
When I went back, and believe me, I can't tell you how many times I've read every single text message on her phone, read through her journal. There was things in her journal that would have indicated, had I read it, that she was struggling. She said she wrote a letter to God. Bethany got saved when she was a little girl, and we had messages all over her phone that kids that she went to school with asking her to pray for them, and her praying for them and sending them messages back. And I'm not trying to make her a saint, that because she was a kid like any other kid, you know, but she believed in God and she trusted God. And she was 16. We'd just bought her a car. She loved horses. And I did notice a few weeks or maybe even a month before that she usually couldn't get enough of the horses. She would go to the barn just to brush them. She'd ride them. She was always wanting to spend time with the horses. And she had lost interest, but we had bought her a car. And I felt like the car was probably taking precedence over the horses. It was summer, and I did notice that her sleep was off. Like she would sleep in real late, which was out of her, set up real late and sleep in real late. But I really just disregarded it as summer. You know, I didn't really see it for what it was. Bethany I can tell you, Bethany never come home crying. She never seemed depressed or upset, just polar opposite of that. She was always the kid that was laughing and having a good time and wanting to be there for everybody else. Never saw any signs that anything was wrong.
No signs of depression?
No, nothing like that. I mean, that morning, it was over her summer break. She got up and she had got her school schedule. We went over her school schedule. She told me the classes that she wanted to take She wanted to change a few. She asked me about taking a math class that she would get college credit for. And she said, I'm going to talk to my math teacher because I struggle with math a little bit, and I just want to make sure she'll tutor me if I have any, issues with it. We planned where we were going to go shopping. We went through her clothes to decide what she still needed. So that morning at 7:00, she had give no indication that she wasn't planning on being there the next week to start school. And at 5:00, we were doing CPR on her in the bedroom.
Was there any signs afterwards from anything friendly?
We did. Someone did come to me. Actually, it was my coroner. He came to me and told me that he thought, and I was in such a state of mind when he said this that I didn't even process it. He told me that he thought Bethany died of duress. And it was like 3 days later before I realized that he had said that to me. People come to my house that night when it happened, and they'll tell me, I remember when we come that night and talked to you, and they'll tell me what I said. I don't even remember them being there. I don't remember them even coming. So when I called him and asked him, what did you mean when you said that? He said that there had been a boy that had came to the police department the day after she passed away, that said he felt like she was being bullied and harassed by a boy at another school. And we did have that followed up on, and there was some messages that the state police pulled off of her phone that they said I could charge him with bullying, but he was like 14 and he would get community service, and he would never, there would never be any other indication more than that. Her brother was 18, very protective of his sister, and I chose not to read the messages and not to pursue that because I had an 18-year-old son that could be charged as an adult if he decided to take matters into his own hands and felt like. So that's the only thing that's out there. I asked him, do you think that, he said, I think she could have been affected by what the boy said, but in all reality, knowing my daughter, she really wasn't the kind of person, or didn't seem to me to be the kind of person that worried much about what anybody else thought normally. She didn't really seem to let things affect her. So I don't know, I don't know that, I won't say that it's his fault. When I read through her journal, and I had not read her journal, I'll let that be private. And I have a real guilt problem with that today, because I feel like, you go back and it's, if I hadn't done this, if I hadn't said this, if I hadn't done this 2 years ago, if she hadn't got upset about this, you rerun. I mean, you're just like that little mouse in that wheel, and you run every single thing that's ever happened that you can ever think of over and over and over in your mind, that if you had done it different, said it different, if it had been different, could this have made it different? In her journal, she, it was very similar to what Michelle said, what I read. She said in the letter she wrote to God that she felt like God had made her heart, put a hole in her heart. She felt empty. She didn't know why. She had a good family. She knew God loved her. She had a lot of support at church. She didn't know why she felt the way she felt. She felt empty. That's what she described, was just, I feel emptiness. I don't know why I feel this way. That was in her journal a lot.
It was something you never
Never saw it. Never.
talk or anything.
No. Seemed like the happiest kid on earth. If you had handed me that journal and said, this, Bethany wrote this stuff down, and I didn't know for a fact she wrote it, I would say, there's no way my daughter wrote that.
Well, and one of the things that
I wouldn't have believed it.
When she told me that, one of the things that, I could say about that is that I never asked for help, or I never wanted anybody to know I was depressed, because I had a fabulous mom and dad, and I didn't want them to feel some kind of guilt because something was wrong with me, because my heart wasn't right. I would have gone to my grave to protect them because of how wonderful they were to me, and that's where that shame comes in, because you instantly feel like there's something really wrong with me, and Satan uses that to just constantly tell you. And Bethany was a lot like me in some ways. She wanted to fix
the most troubled kid at school she would go to, and she would pull in and try to fix them. And that's just, and you can't, and that's one of the things Satan would always tell me. It doesn't matter how much you do, you're never going to fix it. You're never going to be able to fix it. And I wish, there was some magic words you could say to say this is why it happens or how it happens. But I could say with 100% surety it's nothing that my parents did or Missy or Anthony did that makes you feel that,
But I felt that way when I heard about kids that had passed away by suicide. My first question was, did they have a bad home life? Was their mom and dad together? Is somebody on drugs? Is there abuse? Automatically, that's what I thought. And that's, I think, why it was so hard, because I never thought, if one of my children had died in a car accident, yes. But I never thought suicide would ever be something that they would deal with for whatever reason. At that, I was so naive. I did not realize you don't have to be in a terrible situation for that thought to cross your mind. You don't have to be, grief can do it, affliction can do it, lots of things can do it. And I have found that out through what I've went through, because I myself have contemplated it in November following what happened to her. And I knew what it done to me. I knew what it done to my parents. I knew what it done to, my husband, my son. But in that moment when I contemplated it, I was in the cemetery and I was praying, and I told God, I don't feel you. I don't know where you're at. I cannot do this another day. I can't do this. And I said to him, God, you made me. You know me better than I know myself. You knew when this happened I couldn't do it. And it was just like, why have you struggled all this time? I mean, that's the thought that came to my mind. You're right. God does know you better than anybody. He knew you couldn't do this. Why have you struggled with this? And it was like I could breathe in that moment. It was like, I don't have to do this any longer. I can end this tonight. God knows. He knows. He knows. He understands. And that's how Satan works, though. He finds you in those moments. When you think about Jesus in the wilderness, he tempted him. He tempts us the same way. He knows our weakness, and we just have to come back at him with the scripture, right? I have a lot of friends that are, medical providers. And when that happened with Bethany, I had more than one say, I'm going to give you a prescription for something. There's no way you can go through this. You can't go to this funeral without some nerve medication on board. You are not going to sleep. I didn't sleep for probably 48 hours, maybe 3 days. I went a long time without closing my eyes. I just couldn't sleep. And they all wanted me to sleep. You can't do this. You got to have this medicine. And, I remember praying about it and thinking, if I take this medicine, if I let them write me this prescription, and it's just going to numb it, it's not going to take this, it's not going to bring her back. It's not going to take all this away. It's just going to numb it and put it on the back burner for a little while. And then I'm going to have to deal with how to get off the medicine and how to deal with what's happened. Or I'm going to have this bottle of pills in my cabinet that when I don't think I can do it anymore, I can swallow that whole bottle and maybe I won't have to. So do I really want to take that chance? And I prayed about it, and I said, God, I'm going to go to this. I'm going to go through all this without anything, but you're going to have to help me, because I can't do it without you. I had that prayer with him a lot. I still have that prayer with him today. Sometimes I get up and I look out my kitchen window, and, she talked about the healing. I actually got healed from the grief, a major milestone back last Mother's Day, not this past one, but the one before. But I had struggled so bad with that. I would stand in my kitchen window just ever so often, and I would just say, God, I don't know how much longer I can do this. How much longer am I going to have to do this? Not saying that I was going to take my own life, but just how much longer is it going to be, Lord, till you let me have my journey home? How much longer do I have to suffer this? And one day when I was doing that, when I prayed that, on my phone, I have a little Bible app. It's called a Jesus Sprinkle, and it'll just pop up little sprinkles of, little verses all through the day. And I prayed that. I looked out my window and I said, Lord, I don't know how much longer I can do this. I don't want to seem weak, and I do want to be a vessel for you, but I'm so tired. I'm so tired. And that little verse popped up in my phone, and it was in Isaiah, and it's the one about when it's time, I will make it happen swiftly or quickly. And I felt like that was straight from him. It definitely pertained to the question I had just thrown out there to him. And I knew in that moment, I'm behind enemy lines here. I could go to heaven. I've got a son that's still here that still struggles. He struggles with what happened. He has a hard time dealing with all of it. We all have the guilt. That's what really gets us, is the guilt. Feeling like we should have seen something or done something. And I thought about that. I thought, she is safe. She's okay. She's home. But he's here on the battlefield, and I'm behind, I'm here with him behind the enemy lines, and I'm the one that can help him. I'm the one that he comes to, not his dad. When he's in trouble, or he wants prayer, and we talk, he calls me. I'm the one, I'm the one that can help him. And I thought, how could you consider leaving him here? I read this little verse one time, and it's resonated and stuck with me. It said, God only cries for the living, because they're not home yet. And that's the truth. We're not home yet. We're still here behind the enemy lines, and our job is to get all of those home that we can get home. And we've got a veteran here that can probably relate to that. But God is good, and he never left me. A girl come to the funeral home. I'll get back on task, and then I'm gonna shut up and let you finish. But I went to the funeral home, and there was this little girl that came through the line, and my daughter did they called it modeling, but she did something called Click for a Cause. And what she did, they raised money by, the photographer would take their pictures, these girls' pictures, and he would put it on his portfolio, or a group of photographers. And then they would donate all the money that they raised to food pantries or battered women's shelters or animal rescues, different stuff. And she loved that. She did it all the time, run us to death doing that. And I forgot where I was going. The girl that came to the funeral home, I was standing in line up at the casket, and all these people were coming through, and this little girl came through, and she looked familiar, but I recognized her, but I didn't really know who she was, and she said, I don't know if you remember me, but I was at some of the modeling events that your daughter was at. And she said, when I read about your daughter passing away, I started praying for you all. And she said, I don't know how you feel about God. I don't know if you're a Christian, or anything about you. But she said, God impressed me when I started praying to drive here from Chattanooga to tell you something. And she said, all the way here, I didn't know what God wanted me to say, but I knew he wanted me to tell you something. And she said, I cried and prayed all the way here. And when I pulled in the parking lot, she said, it just came to me that he wanted me to tell you he's never going to leave you or forsake you. He's going to go every step of the way with you. And, I had been praying that to him. Don't leave me. You can't leave me. I can't survive this if you do. And that's the thing about him. He doesn't leave us or forsake us. But we've got to hear that still small voice. We got to listen for him. You can't let the pain and the chaos drown him out. You've got to be a willing vessel. But he'll use you if you are. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm Roger Cook. My mom and dad, they lost 2 children through sickness to death. I've heard my mom make the same statement she made. She don't know how anybody can make it without the Lord. And I know it's a little different. Losing a child, I'm sure, is very, very hard.
Start with you, I guess.
I'm Audrey Daniels, and I've had several people in my family die. Old people from suicide. It's actually been crazy. It's been so many, and I see what it does to people. I see how God uses it to refine people, and I see people that really help the family, but they're kind of just in a stagnation type situation, just kind of zombie-like, really. But it's been
I don't know why the Lord's let me have this, friends and family that's had this happen to them, but, you know, we've been, gosh, we've suffered so much with our family, with young people just hanging themselves just out of nowhere, no reason.
Right.
I mean, just the same story as Bethany's. I mean, just why? I mean, that wasn't even like him at all. Young people, orthopedic surgeons' sons, nurses' daughters. I mean, just regular people just that seems so fun, and just so many times it's like Satan gets them alone by themselves, and somehow he gets in there and just causes them to make a mistake or to choose the wrong thing, just the wrong decision at that time, just the wrong decision, the wrong thing.
The one wrong
The
decision.
one wrong decision. Yeah, it's just so terrible. So I really enjoyed your testimony, and I love to see you strong. This is great, and I have seen that in some of my family members, but others I haven't. So I know the Lord does use it to bring people closer to Him, to refine them. I've seen it myself, and we love our family, and we will see them
We will.
for all eternity. So praise God that is the truth. So.
That's something to definitely be happy about. You know, that He went to that cross and died for us, and this is not the end. This is not it. I mean, can you imagine if this was it? If this was all there was? It would be terrible. But we have that home waiting on us.
I'm Jeff Daniels. I'm her.
Lovely husband.
I don't have anything else to add other than what she did. I'll certainly pray for you. I really enjoyed your testimony. You seem strong. I think the Lord has worked with you.
It's the Lord. It is. I mean, when she talked about the peace that passeth all understanding,
We know.
I can relate to that. And anybody that's been through that kind of trial, it might not be my trial, but there is something to that. When you know God, you can get through it. You can endure it, and it's not the end. You have that hope.
I don't like you ever have.
I have no idea.
I
I couldn't
me
have.
5 years ago because I've got a whole lot closer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's another thing too, if I can interrupt, but like when she was talking about being depressed, when I hear people say I'm depressed, and even if it's my aunt who's always depressed, it strikes fear in me now.
Yes.
It's like, because I know some of the people that have committed suicide were depressed.
Yeah.
And so whenever I hear that, it's like, you gotta say something, you gotta do the right thing, you gotta say something strong about the Lord, you gotta get them on the right direction. So depression it does cause all kinds of trouble.
It does.
And I said, it's in my family, it runs in my family, and I've seen my dad, he committed suicide. It's just terrible, it's a terrible thing. And so, depression and young people having troubles, I'm so awake to that. It's like, wow, somebody needs to be aware of that situation that person's in. So, it's good that you're discussing it. People get to hear more about this.
Well, a lot of people want to hush it down and pretend like it's not there, but the stigma, I think that's a lot of it. Oh, they're crazy. That's kind of what you hear a lot of times. But you know what? What you see right here, that is not what is behind this facade that we see. That is not what's on the inside. I can promise you, if you could see what's on the inside, you would see the most mangled mess. How a tapestry looks on the back, all that crazy looking thread that's just a mess. That's what you would see. You can turn it around and you get this picture, but on the inside, if it wasn't for God, He's just patched me back together. I'm like that broken piece from the shipwreck, but He's restoring me, and giving me the strength. It is the Lord. That's all it is. I can promise you that. Yeah, we'll get the two back in the corner if you want, and then we'll come to you. Does that sound okay? All right. He throwed it back to you. He said, pointed at you. So get that guy.
I'm pointing back at you. I want to hear what Jesus preaching been in.
Uh-oh.
Let me tell you.
Yeah, I'm Steve Borge, blessed to be the pastor here at Indian Creek. So thankful for these folks that I listen here. Speaking about peace, immediately thought of what Jesus said. He said, peace I give, not as the world gives. Give I do. Can't get it anymore.
You can't.
Peace we try to find in the world very superficial, don't last. We can't find them in things. Or even friends can't give us that. I think he does. He's,
He is.
I can see the peace God's given you, I can see it all in your face.
Yeah.
Take a talk. One of the best friends I have in this world took his life. So, I got to talk to his son last week. Again, I witnessed the healing that God had brought to him and peace that he had. I was so thankful that soon going to give him a son. But I lost my edge. I just couldn't understand why, because there was no evidence anything was going on really that caused him to do that. And so, and I'm sure a lot of his family will, question why, like we did, and all the things, but God knows.
Yeah.
And, but, thankful that the board had brought me through the loss. Lost my wife 3 years ago, last month. Thankful for a beautiful family the Lord's given me. Another lady, and we've been married a little over a year. My beautiful daughter's over there. I see her struggle so mightily with the loss of her mother, and still is. But we know who the author of peace is.
Absolutely.
And God is so great. And people try to make it without it. I don't know. They can't. We can. With him, we can.
We can. We're overcomers through him.
Thank you, you came tonight.
Thank you.
Really been blessed.
Thank you. You gonna tell all the mean stuff still after he bragged on you?
My name is Teresa Myers. Like you said, we've been married for a little over a year. I'm a transplant from Ohio. It was kind of scary leaving my children and coming here, but this church has been so welcoming and loving to me. And it's kind of scary being a pastor's wife. But I think I'm okay. I've got a wonderful second family now and helps me get through this. Visit my children. I lost my husband 16 years ago, and on the heels of that, I lost my dad and my mother and our dog that we had for 14 years. So when people say you're strong, it's really having a choice, but I don't know how people do it.
He's our strength, He says in our weakness, he's our strength.
I'm Chris, better known as Courtney's husband. I have a 11-year-old daughter that keeps us very busy. And, but I had an uncle that committed suicide when I was maybe a freshman or a sophomore in high school. And I really looked up to him a lot and couldn't understand why. But yeah, I appreciate you coming tonight and kind of shining a light on it.
I'm Courtney. I'm the wife of Bridget's daughter. And I really enjoyed the meeting tonight. Thanks.
When he talked about, that's something, to a point, I think you feel betrayed too. When that happens, like, why did they do this to me? Why did they leave us here this way to ponder, try to figure out what happened and why didn't they come to us? But I feel like God let me go down that path, with feeling like I couldn't do it anymore. You know what I'm saying? And thinking that in the cemetery that I just need to end it. It's okay. Maybe to help me understand where she was at too. And I can't speak for everybody that has left this world by suicide because we're all different. But I can tell you in that moment from experiencing what I had experienced and knowing what suicide had done to my family, it didn't cross my mind, what's this going to do to my son or to you know, to my husband or to my parents or to all those people that love me, because I know what it's done to me. It's brought me to this point. All I could think about was, I want this to end this way that I feel in this moment. You know, that's all that was on my mind. And I do believe that is how people feel a lot of times. I don't think they're thinking about the people that they love. They're in the fog and they can't seem to find their way through it, you know. But God knows that. God don't abandon us in our weakness. And any of you that have been through trials that are saved and you love the Lord and He's helped you through them, you know that. He's closer to you in that time than He's ever been. He don't abandon you when you're weak. He don't abandon you when you're, you know, feeling despair. He's right there. Did we skip you two back here in the corner?
I'm Ginger Duncan.
Go ahead.
I was going to let Josh tell you who you are, but if I were you, I would speak up and talk for myself.
Retire, happily retired. Shut up. I am a child of God, heir to the throne, and well blessed.
Now, she summed it up, didn't she?
Yeah.
He must be wanting you to tell who he is, too.
I wasn't less good sister, I'll tell you that. Anyway, my name is Dale Lane. And I just want to praise God. I lost my wife almost 6 years ago. It took her about 48 years to get me in church. We was raised in a church, but Leo would not go once he left here. And didn't want to go, didn't have no desire to go. But my wife come down to mention. I made one promise in my life. That I'd take care of her. She didn't want to go in the nursing home. So I said, Lord, you gotta do something. He did. He put me a talk. He gave me the love and peace I need to take care of her. I praise Him every day. I'm praising for my sister.
She's adopted, so don't.
He does run around with you, though, don't he? Didn't y'all come in together? No.
She come in that door, I come in that door. Mom told me she put a spell on me, she did.
I thought you were adopted.
So I guess that concludes it.
You did.
I don't know, I tried.
I believe that.
It's a miracle them two still alive.
They'll be leaving by themselves.
Huh? They'll be leaving by themselves. Something that everybody has relational, and I find this a lot in churches. If you went into some churches right now, I can say this, Steve can say this, different ones. If you've been in any churches, and there's been churches that I have went and filled in for pastors, and I can tell you that there's some things that a church tends to excuse. That's the word I want to use. There's things that people are known to excuse with the thought of the mindset of what I would call immunity. And the problem is there is no immunity from the risk of someone committing suicide. You know that? There is no immunity from that whatsoever. You seen your daughter how long before she committed suicide? How long was the last time you seen her till then? Period of time.
30 minutes.
30 minutes. 30 minutes before she did that, you had no idea what she was about to do. There's no immunity to that. The one thing that I do learn a lot about people is that we as humans are horrible procrastinators. How many here are good procrastinators? They'll wait right up to the wire. Well, what we are really bad at doing is, and Ginger's getting pointed out, what we're really bad at doing is we are trying to take on something that we are not capable of doing ourselves. Grief is the number one problem that can overtake you. People don't believe that a lot of times, but grief is honestly one of the strongholds that if you let it, will separate you enough from the Lord that you lose your strength. You get weak. And there's no immunity from things like that happening. But we, as the strong-willed people that we are, and the mind that we are, we tend to believe we're okay. A lot of people believe I'm okay. Well, in my opinion, the best words that you've ever been given by the devil is for you to believe that you're okay. No matter what it is, grief, anger, no matter what the issue is, addiction, anything that takes you and can take your life, and any of those can do it. Tonight, we're just particularly speaking on suicide, but anything that puts you in the mind and matter that I'm okay, you're done in the snare. You've done made it to the trap. How close any of us are to being around someone that might be near contemplating. And Missy can tell you that in our line of work, we have to ask every person that comes encounter with us of, have you had any thoughts of suicide? That's a screening that we do.
Yes.
And one of the questions in that screening that I do in every single patient, every single room, no matter what age, is, have you had any thoughts about it? And the next one is, have you made a plan? Have you made a plan of what you think you're going to do? And this severity scale that starts lining things up for us to make a decision on what help you may need. You wouldn't believe how many of those people I have in 23 years had answer all those questions to no. I've never had a thought of suicide. No, I have no plan. But in the same shift, a 12-hour shift, they've been brought back through my door after committing suicide. Our mind tells us, and we want to believe the fact of thinking, I'm okay. I'm okay. But the truth is, your heart knows different. The Lord already knows different. Your heart knows different. It's a very strong-willed mannered thing that we go through to get in our minds and believe that I'll be okay. I'll deal with it. I'll be okay. That is already a line drawn. Missy can tell you that there's no planning. I will say this, I'm going to ask Missy this for the people in here that's got children in your home, your family. As a parent looking at this from the other side, what would you tell a parent right now to be doing, to be proactive at involvement with your child?
Talk to them, sit them down, even if it's uncomfortable, and tell them if there's anything that they're struggling with, you want them to come to you, and that they're, you know, I feel like Michelle said that Bethany felt like she couldn't talk to me, but I never sat her down and said, Bethany, if you're ever having any problems with anything, you can come to me. It doesn't matter what it is. I love you, and you can come to me. I felt like she knew that already. You know, we spent 90% of our time together, but I feel like that, and if your child has one of these,
Yes.
be all up in it, all up in their business. Because I'm here to tell you, this exacerbates all of that by 100 times at least. And I mean, I don't have to tell you that as children. I mean, when I was in school, you know, if I had a problem or somebody was saying things that were bad to me or bothering me, I went home. And when I went home, I was home all night long, and I didn't have to deal with that until the next day. You know, but it's not that way now. Now you have 24/7 access, and you have people abroad that don't even know you that can chime in and put their 2 cents worth in. You know, so that's what I would do.
Anybody else got any questions? Anything you thought of you'd like to ask?
I would like to ask, I feel like I'm talking to a whole church congregation here, to give just a word of encouragement as a congregation, a church congregation. She looks like the pillar of strength here tonight, but there was a time that was not the case. And but I want to encourage you. I mean, you pray, you listen to the Lord, but sometimes as Christians we hesitate to act on the voice that we hear because we think, oh, that's no big deal. You know, that's not the Lord. That's no big deal. One night, and this was a particular thing that I went through with Missy, and I had no idea the impact that it was going to make for her that day. I don't know if anybody knows Lonnie Light, but Linda, his wife, passed away, and we were at her funeral. And there was a Sister Terry Leach that was from the Apostolic Church, was at that funeral, and we were talking, and she asked me what I've been into, and I was telling her about Bethany's Hope. And she instantly looked at me and said, her mother knows she's with Jesus, right? And I said, yeah, of course she knows she's with Jesus. You know, people have given her messages of confirmation. I said, we have no doubt in our mind where Bethany is, you know. And you had to know Terry Leach. I don't know if anybody knew her, but Terry was not somebody that did this kind of thing. Very refined, she's a pastor's daughter. But she just constantly, that whole night, just kept coming back to me, and she said, I need you to tell her mother that she's with Jesus. And I said, because I know Terry. I said, Terry, I will tell her that. And she said, promise me. You've got to promise me to tell her that Bethany's with Jesus. And I said, Terry, I will tell her. Well, I went home, you know, how it works in your mind. I thought, you know, if she's having a good day, I don't want to bring that up to her, and I don't want to tell her that. And then it was just like a house sitting down on me. And I thought, no, I told Terry I would, and I'm going to, and I don't, you know, I didn't know then what message I gave her, how it was going to affect her. But I don't know if I texted her, or if I called her that night or whatever. But anyway, I sent her a message, and I was like, you know, I know you know this, but there's this lady, and she's a pastor's daughter, and she was just adamant that I tell you that Beth's with Jesus, and I know you know Beth's with Jesus. That particular time, she was fighting a battle with the devil that I had no idea that she was fighting. And he was trying to convince her that Beth did not make it home. And that was the confirmation that she needed that day. So don't ever underestimate what your prayers can do and how what you receive from the Lord can do for a person. Because you're not just a member of a congregation. You are the workmen and women of God. And he will use you if you allow him to use you to make life better for other people. I mean, that was nothing that I did, but it was Terry's obedience and her just constantly, she pounded it on me. You've got to do this. And it wasn't something I wanted to do, but he gave Terry that word for her. And so don't ever underestimate if you feel the Lord leads you to do something or to say something to somebody, to let him use you that way.
Lastly, anybody else got anything?
Do you all know the story of Horatio Spafford and the song "It Is Well With My Soul"? Are you all familiar with that story? That's a perfect example, I think, of what just being obedient and letting your pain be your purpose, letting your trial be the thing that puts you on the platform to witness. You know, he was a businessman in Chicago, and he lost everything he had in the Chicago fire. Prominent businessman. And then his 4-year-old son died of an illness. He had 4 more daughters and a wife. And he sent them on a trip. I think it was maybe a European cruise. And he was going to meet them. But he stayed behind to finish up some business. And their ship collided with another, and it sank. And the 4 daughters drowned. And his wife was the only one that was left. And she sent him a telegram. And I think it said, I'm the only survivor. Do you know what it said exactly? I survived, what must I do? Or I survived alone. And as he was going to meet her, he boarded the ship and went straight to where she was so they could grieve together and he could be there for her. But as they passed by the spot where his daughters lost their life, he wrote a song by candlelight. It was old, 1800s, but he wrote the song, "It Is Well With My Soul." And that song is in our hymnals today and still reaching people and touching people today. And that just goes to show you, I'm sure that man, when he wrote that poem down, and, when he was feeling so alone and so desperate and so broken, he never knew in the 1800s that in 2026, people would be singing it in their church and it would still be touching their lives. So that just goes to show you, God can give you, it may just be one little sentence you say to somebody, or it may be this other person that you touch their life, what they'll do, you know. But God will use you. God don't waste nothing. He don't waste a tear. He don't waste any of our pain. He don't waste a thing. So, you know, if you give it to him, he'll be fruitful and multiply with it. I'm done, Josh.
Anybody else got anything?
Maybe.
I want something I didn't tell me I was gonna ask her to do, but I do want her to do one thing. I've got some pictures I'll put up here so y'all can see, but I do want her to tell for just a moment what the organization Bethany's Hope does actively, and I'll let some pictures play and slide to play so y'all can see some things that actively are going all the time. Bear with me for just a moment. I'll get it going.
So, you want me to start?
Go ahead.
Start yakking?
Tell them what all y'all do.
So, some of the things that we do with Bethany's Hope, our mission statement is leave people better than you found them. That come out of her journal. And some of the things that we do walks. That's what you see there. That's a suicide prevention walk. We hand out material there for people that are struggling. We do a Christmas parade. We do a motorcycle ride. That's all for awareness. We do a horse ride and a horse show. Bethany loved horses, so that's where the horses come in. And through the horse ride and the horse show, we raise money there for, we supply 988 bracelets in the schools and suicide prevention information into the schools. We do scholarships. Michelle can help me if I forget something. We do, that's our art exhibition. We do a 988 art exhibition with our local schools, and what they do, we pick a Bible verse to be our theme for the year, and they have to do a piece. They just have to incorporate 988 in it. The reason I did that is because you can post posters up all over the place, but if those kids have the 988 number in their mind, they share it with their friends. And that was the motive behind doing the art exhibition. Through the art exhibition, we do a scholarship, and we also do a billboard on I-75 of the winning piece. And then the winning piece gets on I-75 through the holidays, and we usually leave it up for the year, but just through the holidays, 70,000 people, according to the stats, pass that billboard. It has the 988 number on it and the art piece. That's Bethany and her rescue horse, Annie. That's Bethany and I at my mom's. Is there something I'm leaving out? We do an FFA scholarship. Also, that's what we do with that one. These are kids that got our scholarships. With the FFA scholarship, the kids in the FFA come and help us get ready for the horse show. And they work through the horse show with us and help. We sponsored a ball team. We sponsor some ball teams and do some sponsor stuff. We give out bracelets and do banners.
We've also done Bethany Bears.
We've done Bethany Bears. We sent those several places. The girls on the couch were Bethany's babies. We did the Bethany Bears with the Women's Care Center, and we also did it with Lily's Place.
We actually made bears that for women that were choosing to keep to have their children and adopt those out. We made matching bears, and they would get a bear, and one bear would go with the baby, and they had scripture on them. And those were made from pieces of Beth's clothes. There was little parts on those.
Yeah, the bears were pieces of
So we did that for the mother centers, and we've worked with a lot of the women's centers and sent Bethany blankets, the blankets for the babies.
Neonatal abstinent unit for babies that are addicted to drugs.
And then the dementia center, the Bethany, the dolls.
Yeah, the memory dolls. We do memory dolls for BHU, and we're going to be doing those for some of the nursing homes as well. We do missions, like local missions with our group. We try to get kids involved in our community and doing the missions. We do food pantry, and we do like blanket drives. We've done flyers to the nursing home on Mother's Day. We do several things with other nonprofits with our group. I like to get our kids involved because, you know, when kids are just going home, whether it's to a good atmosphere or a bad atmosphere, a lot of times they get on their phones and they don't really feel that sense of value. But when you're out doing stuff for people, it makes me feel good to do something for somebody. I don't know about you, but I mean, it makes me feel good to be able to do something for somebody. And I think it makes them feel good, and it gives them a sense of value. You know, it gives them a sense of purpose.
And I think one of the biggest things that was such a shock and a surprise to us, because we were raised in good homes and we were raised in church. When we first started the group, I guess we were probably a few years in, a couple years in, we would have meetings. And one night, one of the ladies was speaking, and we would just do a devotion. We didn't know what we were doing. We still don't know what we're doing, but God has been gracious to us and helped us. But one night she said, you know, the story of maybe Daniel in the lion's den, and one of the kids raised their hand, and we've been teaching these kids for a couple of years. And he's like, no, I don't know what that means. And we realized that sitting right in our community were kids that had no clue who Jesus was. And you've got people wanting to ship out and do missions all across the world. And what we need is missions right here in our homes, in our hometowns, with these kids that are growing up in drug homes. And I mean, that's one of the things I'm sure everybody here experiences. Nobody is exempt from their child being an addict and it happening right in your home. And we have so many being in healthcare, great grandparents raising their grandchildren. And so that's just one of the things that the Lord brought to us, you know. So we started trying to invite them to churches and to give Bibles to kids that had never had a Bible. That's one of the things that we do. I think that's the extent of it. We do invite people, like on our walks. I don't know if you've noticed the table that held the pictures, but we invite anybody that's lost somebody to suicide to bring those pictures and let us remember their family with them. And we put those up, we keep them, and we put those up at the events, and we try to remember them and honor their lives, because nobody ever wants, you know, their loved ones to be forgotten. And that's one of our missions. We hope to never allow that to happen. You know, they remain with us, and it's just one of the things that we do.
Anybody else got anything tonight? We want to say thank you to these